If you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family for simply setting boundaries, then buckle up, because this story might just hit a little too close to home. My name's Tyler. I'm 27 years old, live in a small but cozy town just outside Portland. And until recently, I thought my family, while dysfunctional in that classic American way, still operated under some baseline of mutual respect. I wasn't expecting unconditional love, but I did think that maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't see me as a walking ATM machine. Turns out, I was wrong. Very, very wrong. The story I'm about to tell didn't start with some big explosive moment. No dramatic fight at the dinner table. No screaming matches or doors slammed in fury. It started with a phone call. Just a normal Tuesday afternoon, me in my apartment after a long day at work, reheating some leftover Thai food, when my phone buzzed. It was Dad. Now, a call from my father wasn't exactly rare, but it also wasn't something that happened casually. He's not the kind of guy who calls to check in or say, "I love you." No, when Dad calls, it's either because something's broken, someone's in trouble, or, more often than not, he needs something. So I stared at the screen for a moment, debating whether I was mentally prepared for whatever was coming. I answered. "Hey, Tyler," he said, voice already shifting into that overcompensating tone he uses when he's trying to sound friendly, but it comes off as forced. "You got a minute?" I should have said no, but I didn't. "Yeah, what's up?" I said, trying to keep things neutral. He got straight to the point. "Your brother's got this business idea. It's a really solid plan. He's been working on it for months, real serious about it. Just needs some capital to get it off the ground." I waited. There was always more. "Okay," I said slowly. "What does that have to do with me?" "Well, I mean, you've got that inheritance money sitting around. It's not doing much in savings, right?" That was the moment my heart sank a little. Let me pause here and explain something important. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was one of the only people in my family who ever truly saw me. He was a quiet man, but sharp, gentle, and fiercely independent. When he passed, he left a decent sum of money to me. Not a crazy amount, no yachts or private jets, but enough to give me a cushion, maybe even a future house down payment if I played my cards right. The key detail? He left it only to me, not to my dad, not to my older brother, Darren, just me. It was written clearly in the will. Why? Well, Grandpa never said outright, but I think he saw the dynamics for what they were. He saw how Darren was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, even when he very clearly did a lot of wrong. And me? I was the one who stayed out of trouble, kept my head down, went to college, worked 2 jobs through most of it, and never asked for anything. So yeah, I think Grandpa wanted to even the scales a little before he left. And now here was my father, casually suggesting that I hand it over. I gave a polite, tight-lipped chuckle. "You're kidding, right?" Dead silence. "I'm serious, Ty. Your brother's been struggling. You're doing fine. And this idea, he's passionate about it. He's already put together a business plan and everything." I wasn't sure what shocked me more, that my dad was asking me to give away my inheritance, or that he thought Darren of all people had a viable business plan. "Dad," I said carefully, "that money was left to me. I'm saving it for something important. I've been responsible with it. It's not just lying around, and it's definitely not a donation fund for Darren's next impulsive adventure." He sighed, annoyed. "You're being selfish, Tyler." That hit me in the gut. Selfish? Me. The one who spent most of his life cleaning up after Darren's messes. The one who kept his head down and didn't make waves. The one who helped pay for groceries when Mom got sick and the bills piled up. I'm the selfish one. "I don't think not giving away my inheritance makes me selfish," I said, voice tightening despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You wouldn't even have that money if it wasn't for this family." I blinked. What does that even mean? He got quiet, like he knew he'd said too much, but he wasn't the kind of man to back down. "Look, just think about it. Darren needs this. He's your brother." "Yeah," I said. "He is. And maybe if he'd made different choices, he wouldn't need me to bail him out." "Again, think about it," he repeated, then hung up. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, the plastic fork in my hand still hovering over cold pad thai. My stomach was a knot. My brain was spinning. I didn't know what made me more upset, my dad asking, or the fact that deep down, a part of me had already expected this to happen. It wasn't the first time they'd crossed the line. It had just never been this blatant. When I was 13, Darren borrowed my birthday money to buy concert tickets. He never paid me back. When I was 19 and trying to save for my first car, Dad asked me to loan it to Darren because he needed transportation to look for a job. The car was trashed within 2 months. And when Grandpa died and the will was read, the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Darren didn't say much at the time, but I caught the way his jaw clenched when he heard I was the sole beneficiary. I guess I always knew that money was going to be a problem, but I didn't expect it to spiral like this. 2 days later, I got a text from Darren. No, hi. No, how are you? No acknowledgement of the years we'd barely spoken unless he needed something. Just this. Dad told me you're being difficult. We really need this. You don't even have a mortgage. Don't be an A*****. I didn't reply. Another message came a few hours later. You owe this to me. Those 5 words. That was when something inside me cracked. I owe this to him. Oh, I didn't respond. But I started writing everything down. Every call. Every message. Every voicemail. Something told me this wasn't going to end with a few passive-aggressive texts. And I was right. What came next wasn't just a few guilt trips or manipulative sob stories. No, Darren and Dad were about to escalate this into something much, much worse. And I was going to find myself at the center of a family war I never asked for. But if they thought I was going to roll over and hand it all away, they had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't respond to Darren's message, but I didn't delete it either. I left it there, burned into my screen like a scar. Not because I needed a reminder of how entitled he was, but because something in my gut told me that this was just the start. And I was right. The next week passed in this strange limbo. I went to work. I cooked my meals. I even managed to catch a movie with a few friends, pretending like everything was normal. But behind all of that, I was tense, waiting for the next hit. I checked my phone obsessively, half expecting a barrage of angry texts or maybe even a peace-offering message that would make me second-guess myself. Instead, there was silence. Too much silence. It wasn't until that Sunday that things escalated. I decided to stop by my parents' house. I wasn't even sure why. I think some part of me still hoped that this could be handled like adults. That maybe Dad would apologize for pressuring me, and we could talk it out. I even practiced a few opening lines in the car, trying to sound firm but respectful. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, but that money is important to me. Or maybe, I love you guys, but I'm not a bank. I didn't get the chance to say any of them. I walked into a war zone. The moment I stepped inside the house, I knew something was off. Mom looked flustered, her hair messy, her glasses askew, like she'd been crying or pacing or both. And Darren was there, sitting on the couch like he owned the place, legs spread wide, arms stretched along the back like some kind of king on his throne. Dad stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, face unreadable. Hey, I said slowly, scanning their faces. Everything okay? Darren snorted. Oh, everything's fine. We were just waiting for His Majesty to arrive. I blinked. What's going on? Dad's tone was cold. Sit down. That wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. And not a particularly friendly one. I didn't move. No. Someone needs to tell me what's happening. Mom opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, then closed it again. Her eyes met mine for half a second. There was something behind them. Guilt? Fear? Regret? I couldn't tell. Then Darren stood up, pulled a manila folder from the coffee table, and tossed it toward me. It slid across the hardwood floor and hit my shoes. What's this? I asked. Open it, Dad said. So I did. Inside was a copy of Grandpa's will. But it wasn't the same one I had seen months ago with the lawyer. The original will had been very specific. I was to receive a trust account with full control over the funds once I turned 25. My name was clearly listed. My share, 100%. No confusion. But this version was edited. Darren's name was on it. The trust was split 50/50ths. My stomach dropped. What is this? It's the corrected version, Dad said, as if it were the most casual thing in the world. I looked up, stunned. Corrected? What do you mean corrected? Grandpa had a lawyer. We all sat in that office. You remember that, right? Dad shrugged. He was old, Tyler. He made mistakes. He meant to include both of you. We spoke to a new attorney, and he helped us file a petition to amend the trust. I stared at him, open-mouthed. That's not how this works. You can't just rewrite someone's will because you don't like what it says. Darren stepped in, arms crossed. That smirk on his face that always made me want to knock his teeth in when we were kids. You always were Grandpa's little pet. But it's time to grow up. That money belongs to both of us. Dad's making it right. I looked at my mom. Is this true? You're going along with this? She didn't speak. She just turned and walked out of the room. And that was the moment something in me snapped. You've got to be kidding me, I said. You really forged legal documents to steal from me? Dad's voice got sharp. Don't throw around accusations you can't prove. Oh, I can prove it, I shot back. I have copies. I have emails. I have everything from Grandpa's lawyer. You think you can just change legal documents because you're angry at how he chose to divide things? He was manipulated, Dad said. By you. I laughed. I actually laughed, even though my hands were shaking. I was 23 when he wrote that will. What did I do? Hypnotize him with good behavior. Darren's voice was ice. You always played the long game. Always made yourself look perfect while I took the heat. But not anymore. I was so angry I couldn't see straight. So this is about resentment? You couldn't handle the fact that someone finally saw through your crap, so you decided to steal from me? Dad raised his voice. Don't talk to your brother like that. He's trying to build something. You're just sitting on that money like it's a trophy. No, I said quietly. I'm protecting it from people like you. There was a pause. A long, tense silence where I swear I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then Dad walked over, looked me dead in the eyes, and said something I'll never forget. If you won't share the inheritance, you're no longer welcome in this house. Just like that. 27 years of birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. Gone. Over a bank account. I didn't say another word. I left. I got in my car, pulled out of the driveway, and didn't look back. But it wasn't over. Oh no. That was just the breaking point. 2 days later, my bank account was frozen. I found out when I tried to transfer some money for rent. Declined. I called the bank in a panic, thinking maybe there was some kind of fraud alert or system glitch. Instead, I was told that a legal dispute had been filed regarding the ownership of the account and trust. Until it was resolved, the funds were inaccessible. I couldn't breathe. I was shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. They had actually done it. They filed a claim against my trust. I went straight to the lawyer Grandpa had used, Mr. Halpern, a sharp old guy with an even sharper memory. I brought every document I had. Emails, letters, even a voice message Grandpa had left me once, talking about the trust. Mr. Halpern was furious. This is fraudulent, he said, flipping through the documents Darren had sent to the court. I don't know who they found to file this, but it's a joke. Can we fight it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Of course we can, but it's going to take time. And they're counting on that. They're counting on you running out of patience or money. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something shifted in me that day. I'd always try to keep the peace. To be the calm one. The rational one. The one who didn't make waves. But that version of me died the moment my own father froze my inheritance and kicked me out of the family. They wanted a war. Fine. They were going to get one. And I was going to make sure they regretted ever underestimating me. But before I could launch my plan, one more betrayal was waiting. One I never saw coming. And that was the one that nearly broke me. I hit rock bottom faster than I expected. After my dad and Darren froze my trust fund, I had exactly $1,342 to my name. That was what I had left in my checking account after rent, groceries, and paying off a small medical bill from a dental surgery I'd been putting off for months. My credit card wasn't maxed yet, but I knew it wouldn't be long. The bank said it would take weeks, maybe months, for the legal dispute over the trust to resolve. Until then, my money was locked, sitting in a box I couldn't open. I couldn't sleep. Nights became endless loops of anxiety. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining every horrible scenario. Eviction, job loss, my car breaking down, the humiliating possibility of calling a friend and asking to crash on their couch. Not because I wanted to, but because I might not have another option. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the betrayal. I kept replaying Dad's words in my head. If you won't share the inheritance, you're no longer welcome in this house. I wasn't even angry in those moments. I was numb. Hollow. It felt like I had lost my family in a single week. And what made it worse was the silence that followed. No texts. No calls. Not even a hey, how are you doing, from Mom. I guess I always knew they didn't really see me. But now I knew they didn't value me, either. I thought I had prepared myself emotionally for the fallout. But grief doesn't always show up in tears. Sometimes it comes as a quiet emptiness, like you're floating above your own life, watching someone else try to survive it. I kept going to work, though. I couldn't afford not to. I had a job as a graphic designer at a small local agency. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. Barely. My boss, Claire, noticed something was off. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said one morning as I nursed my third cup of coffee. "Everything okay?" I nodded out of reflex, then paused. Something about the way she said it, soft, unintrusive, made me falter. "My family's kind of imploding," I admitted. She gave me a look of understanding. Not pity, just human recognition. "If you need time off." "No," I cut in quickly. "I need the hours. Please." She didn't push, just nodded and handed me a new project folder. That's how it started, me slowly clawing my way back from the hole. One project at a time. I stopped hoping for reconciliation and started focusing on what I could control. I canceled all subscriptions, cut my grocery budget in half, sold a few things I didn't need, an old iPad, a guitar I hadn't touched in years, some collectibles that I'd planned to hold on to for the future. I also filed a formal fraud complaint with the court. Mr. Halpern, my grandfather's lawyer, helped me through the process. He didn't sugarcoat anything. The legal system was slow, he said, but we had evidence. And more importantly, we had truth on our side. "Let them keep playing dirty," he told me during one meeting. "That's the thing about people like your father. They don't plan for when someone stands up to them." I held on to those words like a lifeline. Every time I felt like caving and calling my dad just to beg for peace, I remembered that phrase. Let them keep playing dirty. I wouldn't sink to their level, but I wouldn't let them walk over me either. About a month into this whole mess, I had to give up my apartment. It was humiliating, but necessary. The rent was too high for someone whose main source of income was frozen and who was now living paycheck to paycheck. I packed up everything I owned and moved into a tiny room above a garage that a coworker's cousin was renting out. It had no insulation, a single window that barely opened, and a leaky faucet that made a dripping sound every night like water torture. But it was mine, and it was cheap. And somehow, it became my sanctuary. In that little space, surrounded by boxes of my stuff and walls that echoed every sound, I began to rebuild, not just my life, but myself. I started freelancing again. Late nights and weekends were spent designing logos, websites, flyers, anything I could get my hands on. I polished my portfolio, started networking in online forums, and slowly began to build a reputation. One of the first real turning points came when I landed a project with a startup looking for a full brand redesign. It wasn't huge money, $1, $200 split across 3 milestones, but it was mine. I didn't have to share it, justify it, or explain it to anyone. That small win gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks: pride. Not the performative kind. Not the kind you post on social media with a fake smile. Just a quiet, internal pulse that reminded me I was still capable. That even after being blindsided, betrayed, and financially kneecapped by my own family, I could still create something valuable. I also started journaling. Nothing fancy, just a cheap notebook where I wrote everything I was too afraid to say out loud. Anger, grief, hope. It became a ritual. Every night before bed, I'd light a cheap candle, sit by the window, and write. The first entries were raw. I hate that I still miss them. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm actually being selfish? I keep dreaming about Grandpa. I wish he could see what's happening. But over time, the tone changed. I didn't cry today. I finished another project, and the client loved it. I don't owe them anything. Somewhere in that process, I started feeling whole again. Not healed. Not yet. But whole enough to stop blaming myself for their choices. And then, like clockwork, Darren came back. I was checking my email one morning when I saw it. The subject line was, "Be reasonable, Tyler." I clicked it before I could stop myself. "You've made your point. Dad's pissed, but whatever. I just want to talk. Maybe we can figure something out before things get worse." I didn't reply. An hour later, another email arrived. "You know you're dragging Mom into this too, right? She's not doing well. All this stress. Don't you care what it's doing to her?" That one stung more than I expected. Because yes, I did care. I still loved her, even if she hadn't stood up for me. Even if she disappeared into silence when I needed her most. But I was done being emotionally blackmailed. Instead of replying, I added the emails to my legal folder. Mr. Halpern was pleased. "Keep every communication," he said. "The more they try to manipulate you, the better it looks when we present your case." A week later, I got a notice. The court date had been set. 6 weeks out. That gave me a timeline. A goal. A light at the end of a very long, very dark tunnel. I threw myself into work. I started waking up early, going for runs in the morning even though I hated running. Something about pushing my body helped clear my mind. I stopped eating instant ramen and started learning to cook simple meals. I got a plant. A cactus, because let's be honest, anything more complex would have died within days. But I named it Hank and watered it every Sunday. I wasn't thriving exactly, but I wasn't falling apart either. And then, something wild happened. Claire, my boss, called me into her office. "I've been watching your work," she said, pushing a folder across her desk. "You've been killing it lately. Clients love you. And you've taken on twice the workload without complaint." I didn't know what to say. I just stared. She smiled. "We'd like to promote you. Junior art director. It's not a massive raise, but it's a start. And we'll cover your certification fees if you want to take any advanced design courses." I felt my throat tighten. I managed a quiet, "Thank you." That night, I sat in my freezing little garage room, holding that offer letter in my lap, and cried for the first time in weeks. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't losing everything. Maybe I was just making room for something better. But the moment I let myself believe things were finally turning around, another storm came knocking. And this one was personal. Because the next time Darren showed up, he didn't come with words. He came with something I never expected. A threat. The threat didn't come in a voicemail or a knock at the door. It came in the form of a letter. A real, physical envelope, stuffed into the rusted mailbox that sat crookedly outside my garage unit. It was late, probably past 8 p.m., and I'd just come back from picking up a cheap rotisserie chicken from the supermarket. I wasn't expecting anything, which made the envelope stand out even more. No return address. Just my name, in all caps. Tyler. The handwriting was familiar. Sloppy rushed. Darren's. I didn't open it inside. I stood in the cold, under the flickering motion sensor light, and carefully tore the envelope at the corner. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No salutation. No signature. Just 8 typed words, center-aligned on the page like a threat from a bad movie. "If you fight this, you'll regret it forever." That was it. No details. No bluff to call. Just vague intimidation. At first, I laughed. A real, shaky laugh that burst out of my chest before I could stop it. This was what he had now? Anonymous threats in snail mail envelopes? He'd gone from playing golden child to low-budget mobster. But the laughter didn't last. Because as much as I wanted to brush it off, I knew my brother. I knew how far he could go when he felt backed into a corner. When we were kids, he once broke my nose and told our parents I walked into a doorknob. When we were teenagers, he slashed my bike tires because I snitched about him skipping school. Every time, he got a slap on the wrist, and I was told to be the bigger man. Now, I had something he wanted. Something he thought was rightfully his. And now that his little legal stunt wasn't working as fast as he'd hoped, he was showing me what came next. So I made a choice. I stopped playing defense. Up until now, I'd been reacting, putting out fires, scrambling to survive, hoping for the system to protect me. But I'd spent too long waiting. Waiting for justice. Waiting for my dad to apologize. Waiting for my mom to say something. Anything. To make me feel like I wasn't alone. They weren't coming to save me. I was going to save myself. And maybe, just maybe, burn the whole rotten structure they'd built around themselves. I started that same night. The first step? Information. I made a burner email and began digging into Darren's business plan. The one that supposedly justified all this madness. Turns out, he'd posted pieces of it on a crowdfunding site a few months back, complete with a pitch video where he stood in front of a rented office space, talking about launching the next big app for digital wellness. It was nonsense. Generic buzzwords, vague promises, zero product. But that wasn't what caught my attention. In the video's comments, someone had posted, "Didn't this guy already try this same app under a different name in 2021? I followed that breadcrumb. 10 minutes later, I found an archived site for a now-defunct startup Darren had launched called MindGrow. Same logo, same app description, same font. That company had failed. Badly. According to a forum post I stumbled across, MindGrow had taken in almost $40,000 in investor seed money and vanished 6 months later with no explanation. Comments were brutal. Total scam. Never got a single update. Avoid this guy like the plague. I screenshot everything. Then I went deeper. I called up an old college friend named Brandon. He's one of those people who has an MBA, 3 side hustles, and a suspicious amount of free time. More importantly, he used to intern at a compliance firm that specialized in due diligence for investors. I need to know if my brother's ever been in legal trouble for business stuff, I told him. Brandon was intrigued. Ooh, messy family drama. I'm in. 3 days later, he called me back. Your brother was served a cease and desist in 2022 by a former investor. No lawsuit, just a strongly worded letter and threats to go public if he didn't shut things down. Looks like he walked away from it. I added that to the folder. But I wasn't done. I started compiling everything. The edited will, the emails, the forged signatures, the attempt to freeze my trust, the anonymous threat, Darren's scammy business history. I organized it all into a master document, a digital war chest labeled just in case. But a revenge plan doesn't run on info alone. I needed leverage. That's when I remembered something from years ago. Back in college, Darren once boasted, drunkenly at a Thanksgiving dinner, no less, that he had an offshore account just in case Uncle Sam ever got too nosy. Everyone laughed. Dad gave him a playful nudge and said, "That's my boy." I rolled my eyes and went back to my mashed potatoes. But what if it hadn't been a joke? I scrolled through Darren's old social media. Most of it was useless posturing. Photos of him in borrowed suits, renting expensive cars, captioned with stuff like "manifest your destiny" and "work in silence. Let success make the noise." Gag. But buried deep in his Instagram from 2019, I found a photo of him at a rooftop bar in Panama City. Hashtag international money moves. I added it to the war chest. The next step was legal firepower. Mr. Halpern was good, but he was old school. He believed in the system. I needed someone younger, hungrier, someone who didn't mind playing a little dirty. Through a friend of a friend, I got a consult with a lawyer named Maya Lin. Late 30s. Ex-corporate litigator turned independent. She wore combat boots to the meeting and had a file on Darren before I even walked through the door. "This is all very cute," she said, flipping through my documents. "But if you want to actually hurt him, reputationally, legally, financially, we'll need to go further." "I'm listening," I said. She grinned. "Let's hit him where it hurts." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya helped me draft a detailed fraud complaint against Darren for misrepresentation in the trust dispute. It wouldn't just dispute his false claim to the inheritance. It would accuse him of knowingly submitting forged documents and engaging in financial manipulation with intent to deceive. The key? We weren't going to file it right away. Not yet. We were going to use it. Because Maya had a contact in the DA's office. "If he's running more scams under the table," she said, "this might nudge them into looking closer. And even if it doesn't lead to charges, an open investigation is often enough to spook the hell out of someone." I started sleeping again. Only a few hours a night, but it was enough. Enough to dream. Enough to wake up with energy. Because now I had a plan. I also started seeing a therapist. Yeah, I know. Plot twist, right? But something about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the exile, the uphill climb, it made me realize I needed help processing it all. Not just the legal mess, but the grief. The ache of losing the family I thought I had. Her name was Jordan. She didn't tell me I was wrong for feeling angry. She didn't tell me to forgive and move on. She said something better. "You were raised to think love had to be earned through sacrifice. But that's not love. That's compliance. What you're doing now, that's love for yourself." That stuck with me. And it became part of the plan. Because the final phase wasn't just about Darren, or Dad, or even the money. It was about making sure no one like them could ever do this to me, or anyone else, again. So I started working on the final piece. A full timeline. Every moment. Every lie. Every shady deal Darren had pulled. Every manipulation from Dad. Every silence from Mom. I was going to put it all together. Not just for court, but for something bigger. Because if they thought freezing my account, forging documents, and kicking me out was the end of it, they were about to learn what it really meant to burn bridges. And I had just struck the match. Revenge, when done right, doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with a calm, a deep, satisfying silence. Like the moment just after a storm, when everything is soaked and broken, but somehow clean. That's how it felt when it was finally over. And it started with a single envelope. Not a threat this time. No anonymous message typed in bold. No crooked handwriting. This envelope came with a seal. A real one. It was hand-delivered to Darren's apartment by a process server while he was hosting a launch party for his digital wellness empire, which still didn't actually have a product. He opened it right there in front of a crowd of would-be investors, influencers, and clout-chasing friends. Inside was a formal fraud complaint, filed through the civil court, backed by evidence and statements, with a list of supporting exhibits so long it needed an appendix. It named Darren and my father as co-conspirators in an attempt to commit inheritance fraud through forged documents, manipulated legal filings, and false claims of family entitlement. We had screen captures, messages, emails, and multiple statements from their lawyer, who quietly backed out after Maya sent a friendly letter reminding him of his ethical obligations to the bar. We also included a motion to unfreeze the trust based on demonstrably false claims. Maya had timed it perfectly, filed it the same week the court was reviewing Darren's side, ensuring our version came with more heat, more evidence, and, most importantly, a formal letter from Grandpa's original attorney affirming that the will had been signed in full mental capacity, with no ambiguity, and had never been altered. The moment that document hit the judge's desk, Darren's version of events began to unravel. Meanwhile, Maya did what she called soft pressure. She passed a copy of our fraud filing to the local news tip line, anonymously, and it didn't take long for an article to go live. Local startup founder named an inheritance fraud case. It wasn't a front-page scandal, but it was enough to get tongues wagging in the investor circles Darren desperately needed. His email list went quiet. His crowdfunding page plummeted. Even his own web developer posted an update saying he was no longer affiliated with the project. He tried to save face, of course. Posted a vague, misunderstood family drama update on social media. Said it was all just a big miscommunication and that haters were trying to bring him down. But once your name is linked to words like fraud, inheritance manipulation, and legal investigation, you don't bounce back overnight. Especially not when you are guilty. And while Darren scrambled to clean up the mess, I went for the checkmate. Remember that little war chest I'd been building? I shared it with Maya, and she found something interesting: multiple bank transfers to an account in Panama that weren't disclosed in Darren's business filings. Maya flagged it in our complaint and CC'd the IRS fraud division. It wasn't enough to trigger an audit, not immediately, but it was enough to start a file. And the best part? We made sure Darren knew. A letter showed up at his door 2 weeks later. From the Department of the Treasury. Just a notice of interest in foreign financial transactions. I can only imagine the look on his face when he opened that one. As for Dad, his downfall was quieter, but in some ways, deeper. The fraud complaint included his name and role in attempting to revise Grandpa's will. And Maya, God bless her ruthless heart, made sure the complaint mentioned that he'd pressured the plaintiff under threat of familial exile to relinquish legal assets to the defendant without due process or written consent. It sounded cold and clinical, but it translated to something simple. He tried to bully me into giving away my future, and it was on public record. That kind of accusation didn't sit well with the community he'd spent years trying to impress. His golf buddies, his Rotary Club, his old coworkers from the electric company, they all heard about it. The man who once walked into rooms like he owned them now avoided eye contact at the grocery store. Word got around fast in our small town. Faster than I thought it would. But none of it compared to what happened when the court finally ruled. The judge dismissed Darren's claim entirely. Called it a clear case of opportunistic interference with a lawful testamentary arrangement. Then, in language I wish I could frame on a wall, she added, the defendant's actions show a pattern of entitlement, deception, and coercion unbecoming of someone petitioning this court in good faith. The trust was fully reinstated under my name. All funds released. And the best part? The judge ordered Darren and my father to pay for my legal fees. Maya looked thrilled when the ruling came in. I could see the gleam in her eyes. They just got spanked by the court, she whispered to me after the session. This is better than I expected. It was the first time in months I felt like I could breathe again. After the ruling, Darren tried to call me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Ty, look, I know things got out of hand. But maybe now we can talk, man. Family's family, right? I deleted it without listening to the rest. Then came the email from Dad. Short. Cold. No apology. Just, you got what you wanted. Hope you're happy. And I was. Not because I won, but because I'd finally stopped needing their approval. Mom was the only one who didn't reach out at all. She disappeared into silence like she always did, and I finally stopped making excuses for her. That was part of the healing, too. I took some of the trust money and found a new place. Nothing extravagant, just a clean, quiet apartment with windows that let in the morning light. I kept freelancing, even after my promotion. Built up my own client list. Slowly, I started feeling like my life belonged to me again. A few months later, I found myself standing at Grandpa's grave. I brought flowers, the cheap kind from the grocery store, but I think he would have liked them anyway. I stood there for a long time, thinking about everything he gave me. Not just the money, but the strength, the wisdom, the silent love of someone who saw through the noise and believed in me. I kept it safe, I told him, just like you wanted. And I meant it, because the truth is, this was never just about the inheritance. It was about reclaiming myself, my voice, my boundaries, my worth. In the end, I didn't burn bridges. I let them burn themselves. And I walked away with my head high, my future intact, and the one thing they could never take from me again: my peace.